What is good, everybody? Juliana Page here, and I want to share about essentially, are you ready for love? I know that in the work that I do, a lot of times folks are focusing on relationship, which we need relationships to thrive in life. We just absolutely do. But when we're talking about intimate relationships, particularly a partnership, marriage, right? Or anyone who's single, wanting to be married or believing that they're ready to be married, I've got some safeguards, if you will, some things to consider before diving in. Okay. So, everyone wants love, everyone feels incomplete without another a lot of the time, although that's not true, right? So, as much as people want love, as much as people think that they need another human to be complete, my argument would be you're not ready until you understand that you're complete by yourself. You're whole all by yourself. You with God are what you need, right? Before you can add anyone to that, you've got to be whole and complete in that. Otherwise, there's a certain desperation, there's a certain longing, there's a certain gap that only God can fill that you'll be trying to get another person to plug. And that just won't work because humans will let you down. Okay. So you hear it, everyone wants it, but are you ready? I think is the question. Very seldom do you hear or do you see people talk about the actual work that it takes, let alone the purpose of what marriage is about, right? You do hear, though, about the divorce rate. You do hear about, how glamorous it looks on the outside, and then you come to see that it was not the case, right? So you do hear all of these stories, but it's not often that you hear good stories. It's not often that you hear what actually is going on. So self-examination is super important. Okay? Because a lot of people don't talk about the hard stuff. A lot of people don't talk about the work. They talk about the engagement. They talk about the wedding. They talk about those really basic beginning steps, but not really going through and doing life together and what that looks like. So, for context, I'm going to give you 5 things to think through if you do believe that you're ready. Okay? Which is not, again, good, bad, right, or wrong. There's absolutely no judgment. My encouragement, my invitation on today is to consider, are you really ready? Have you actually done some of the self work and self-examination that is required before you partner with somebody else? That would be a question. Okay, so 1, have you processed the example of your parents? Whether that be good or bad, whatever the example was, have you processed that? Because to some degree, whatever showed up in the relationship that your parents have, if you've not looked at it, it's going to show up in you also, right? So, speaking from my own story, my parents were really hard workers. My parents were non-confrontational. My parents were not good communicators. My parents ran or hid issues. My parents kept privacy and secrets, right? And didn't really learn how to communicate and express themselves. My parents really had an eye for beautiful things and I guess to some degree, materialistic things. My parents enjoyed outings with friends and having a lot of structure and order and plans, even on a vacation, right? So some of these things, my organization, my preparation, my work ethic, a lot of that has come through what I saw, what I was exposed to. However, there were a lot of bad habits. So I'm adopted, and my family of origin, or my family where I grew up, there was alcoholism, there was workaholism, there was a lot of stuff going on and a lot of layers. So I learned not to communicate and express myself. I learned not to talk and really just to suppress my voice. I learned how to just, be quiet, keep it moving. I learned how to push. I learned how to carry the weight that wasn't being lifted around me. So I learned how to fill in the gaps and be useful and be a people pleaser and codependent in a lot of ways. And all of that was unhealthy, but I had to look at that. right? Because I was exposed to it. And that would inevitably, if I didn't address it and take a look at what was going on there, that would inevitably show up in my relationships, right? So essentially, what has been programmed into you by the examples that you've seen in your upbringing? That doesn't necessarily, if you weren't raised by your parents, maybe it's not your parents, but whoever you were closest to, what example did you see? Did you see examples of healthy relationships? Did you see examples of good communication? Did you see examples of work ethic? Did you see examples of spiritual values and a legacy of faith? Did you see examples of what you aspire to? Or did you not see those examples, right? What has actually been deposited into you? Okay. Have you actually processed that? Right. So, for example, I know in former relationships, I've had growing up, we would talk about OCD, right? Because my level of clean and my level of organization was next level to somebody that didn't come to like literally some of the OCD habits that I was cultivated in, right? So me taking care of my things can look OCD to somebody that is not familiar with that kind of care, right? So again, no judgment. That was just, comedic relief, I'm sure, for some of the folks that I was in relationship with. But that was deposited into me. Taking care of your things is something that you do, right? But it was to a degree that was probably next level, right? Or being on time and time management was huge, or a certain level of achievement, like A's in school were it. Like you didn't get an option. You weren't just like scooting by. You were like top tier. So these were things that growing up were ingrained in me. So I learned how to push. I learned how to be disciplined, right? However, because I wasn't good at expressing emotion, because I didn't see how we did that, we didn't do that. We didn't talk about what was wrong. We didn't address or confront things that were legitimate issues. We just didn't talk about it. We just kept it moving. We act like everything was okay when it was very much not okay. So that was something that I really had to process, because what that created for me was taking on a ton of stuff that was never mine to carry, and that becoming normal. So I would attract folks into my life that needed a lot of help, right? That needed a lot of structure, that needed a lot of organization, that needed someone to help fix their life. And I ain't that girl, right? But I learned that. And so unless I addressed that, I wouldn't understand, why do I keep attracting this, or what do I do with it so that I don't have this as a norm anymore, right? How do I flip the script in my life? So that's number one. Have you processed the example of your parents being good or bad? Because that's really important too, to help you be sensitive. So if you had a really good example, you might be connected or just in relationship with anyone in your life that didn't have that example. So you might be able to deposit some really neat things into them. So keep that in mind also. Number two, have you grown beyond the pain of your previous situationship, of your previous relationship, of your previous partnership, whatever that was for you? Have you grown beyond the pain of that? So I know, for example, I had a really devastating relationship. I wrote about it in my first book, God's Vibes Matter, Reclaiming Your Spiritual Authority. Not the whole book. It's in a chapter somewhere in there. But I wrote about it because it was a really compelling experience. It was something that shocked me. It was something that literally woke me up, caused the veil to be lifted in my life, and it led to my salvation experience as well. But it took me a long time to grow through the pain of that situation. Okay. What I thought was a real relationship very much was not, but it took a few years to grow through the pain of that. And that was intentional time where I had like a do not disturb on my heart. I was pulling back from things. I was developing a relationship with God. I was just aligning, right? Like I'm now understanding in that time who I am. Like, what is my identity in Christ? Like I had no clue. I was not living that way. What does it mean to walk and live by the Spirit? I had no idea. So I had to learn and develop relationship with God. And I was really heavily involved in service and just really simplifying things and just pulling back and being like, what did I just walk through? Like, what must I look at? What must I address that is unhealed in me so that I can grow beyond the pain of what happened? Okay. And also be aware of how did I contribute to that situation, whether that was not having solid boundaries, whether that was tolerating things, enabling things, allowing things, right? Like what was my part in that also, which is huge. A lot of times we don't do that. We like to just point fingers and be like, this person was horrible. This is what happened to me. But it's so much more, what was your role in that, so that you can actually grow beyond the pain of that and release that person, okay? And have real forgiveness happen, whether or not you can actually talk to that person about it, which can be incredibly healing. If not, you can always write a letter and rip it up. But you can still go through the forgiveness process and bring closure to yourself, even if you never get that from another person. So that'd be number 2. Have you grown beyond the pain of your previous situation, whatever that is? Okay. 3, are you whole enough to be honest about your insecurities? You probably do not like this one, but are you whole enough to be honest about your insecurities? I call this self-acceptance. So it's understanding that you are flawed as a human, that you have weaknesses, just like you have strengths, that you don't always hit the mark. Sometimes you miss, right? You make mistakes, and there's things that you're fearful about. There's things that you're insecure about. There's things that really make you uncomfortable. But do you wear a mask and do you fake that and do you hide that? Because if you don't accept yourself, you will always hide yourself from others. If you don't accept yourself, you will always hide yourself from others. And people can't fully love you when you're hiding. So that is the very best way to describe what happens when we're kind of in this honeymoon phase of a relationship. And then once you get in a few months, right, you start to self-sabotage, or the relationship starts really getting rocky because there's masks that are in jeopardy, right? Like you might lose the mask, and that would be the worst thing ever, that somebody would actually see who you are and not choose you. So sometimes we sabotage because we don't want to be abandoned. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be found weak or vulnerable, right? And this can happen to guys or girls. So if you don't accept yourself, right, you will always hide yourself from others, and people cannot fully love you when you hide. So that is something to really take a look at. Are you wearing masks in your relationship? I've talked about this before. Like we're usually dating so many people in one relationship. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we have who we are and our truth. We have who we are wanting other people to see. So this mask, and then also who we're trying to adapt to be for this other person, because we think we want them. We think that they want us to show up that way. So there's at least 3, different ways of showing up right there. Okay. And then your partner, whoever you're with, could be like that too. There could be who they actually are, who they show you, and then who they deliver based on what you say you want or need. So it's really great acting, right? And so sometimes people can act for months at a time, and you never really get to see who they are. They could just be fun, charming, charismatic, know how to do all of the game playing, if you will, know how to pull all the stops, know how to work the relationship, right, to a degree, but never allow you to fully get close enough to really actually understand who they are and know them intimately. It's wild. You could spend years with somebody and still not know who they are. So keep that in mind, depending on what it is that you're looking for out of a loving relationship. Do you want somebody that's wearing a mask? Because if you're wearing one, they probably are too. Okay, so anyone that can't accept your truth is not designed to go to the next level with you. That's the reality. So can you accept yourself enough to admit and to share your insecurities? Because the right person can hold space for that and love you beyond that, right? To not disqualify you, not judge you, not criticize you, not use that against you, not take advantage of that, but can help you grow out of some of that, right? They can call you higher, and they can walk with you as you grow more and more secure, right? There can be more trust developed with the right person. They can accept who you are, right? And allow you space to become who you actually want to be. It's a really beautiful thing. So keep that in mind. Anyone that can't accept your truth is not designed to go to the next level with you, because you are always going to be evolving if you choose, right? So you're going to grow or evolve. And I say we either grow or we die, right? Because dying is really going back to old places and repeating past things. It's not growing, it's not evolving, it's not advancing in any kind of way, right? It's just going backwards in a lot of ways. Okay, so keep that in mind. Number 4. Now, this one is big. Are you mature enough to handle another person's truth? Crazy. Okay, so you might get to a place where you finally accept yourself and your truth, but somebody might hit you, blindside you. They could have kept something with you to, they think, protect you. And you might come face to face with another person's truth. And are you mature enough to handle that? Sometimes you don't know the answer to that, to be real, until you walk through something. But my encouragement would be, if you're walking with God and this is somebody that's designed to be in your life, God will give you the grace to go through that with them. Okay, but that is something that you choose. It's not easy by any means. And I don't think that we can do it in our human selves. I think it's a supernatural thing. It's extending grace to somebody where it's almost like you have a boundary or a non-negotiable or a red flag. I don't know what you want to call it, but something that's pretty weighty that you would not accept, that you would not be okay with. And it's revealed about this other person. Can you still handle that? Or are you going to judge them? Are you going to pull the stops? Is there going to be an ultimatum? And this is layered. So just giving you context, right? Because in marriage specifically, it's for better or for worse. Okay. And sometimes you don't see somebody's full truth in the beginning. So you might see that later. And are you mature enough to handle another person's truth? Just a thought. Okay. Now, lastly, are you established in who you are to the point that you know who fits? This one is huge. And honestly, I guess they all kind of build on each other, but this one is huge. Are you established in who you are to the point where you know who fits? So what does this mean? Being established in who you are to the point where you know somebody who fits is you really understand who you are in your identity. You understand your purpose, and you're very much about your purpose. You're living that every day. You're busy about the business that you're here to do, that any person that would come in would have to fit. Otherwise it's a no-go, right? But also, you don't need them, which is such a beautiful thing. Like, you are whole and complete by yourself, like I mentioned. So you are whole and complete. You have a relationship with God. You're walking out your purpose. And if somebody comes along, they will complement that. But there's not this same, like, if you don't have that, if you don't know who you are, and if you're not busy about your purpose, there's this desperation that I'm incomplete, that I need this status update, that I'm with somebody, that I'm in a relationship, that I'm getting engaged, that we're getting married. Now all the attention can be focused on that, right? But the worst thing would be for you to get into a relationship with somebody that you were never designed to be in a relationship with, or somebody that doesn't fit where you're going. And a lot of times we date for where we are versus where we're going. Doesn't make any sense, because if you're going to continue to grow and evolve, you want to date with your future self in mind, right? Can this person grow with you? Are they a fit in the sense that they value what you value, that they're growing and they have their own relationship with God? Let's say they're doing their own personal development. They're busy about their purpose. Can you guys run together? Or no? Like, does this fit or no? Because if the answer is no in the beginning, you're in for a bumpy ride. So hopefully these 5 things that I've shared help you assess clearly. As I was going through, just do a self-examination and decide, well, reflect really. Are you ready for love, right? Like, it's easy to say that you are. It's easy to say that your heart is open. It's easy to say that, yes, but when it comes to the reality of these things, like, Have I actually processed what I've been exposed to or taken a look at what's been deposited in me, what I might be projecting or bringing into a relationship with somebody else? Have I grown past pain, or am I going to hurl all of these old issues on the person that's not at fault for them, right? Like, am I going to make all these assumptions and have all these expectations or treat this person really poorly because of unhealed things that I never processed? Or am I whole enough to understand that my value and my worth doesn't come from my insecurities, right? That doesn't make me less valuable. That doesn't make me less worthy, but I do have some insecurities. So are you whole enough to be honest about that? And are you mature enough to handle another person's truth, right? Like, for example, what if somebody tells you they don't want to have kids, but you do? What if somebody tells you they don't want to be married, but that's your value? Right? What if somebody tells you that they're, after having this really great corporate job, they're going to go into ministry? Right? Like, can you handle somebody's truth? It's not always bad stuff, but it's different. And are you mature enough to handle that? Okay. Love, yes. Love is mature. So keep that in mind. And then, are you established in who you are to the point that you know who fits? A lot of times we figure this out after the fact. We're already in a relationship and we're like, yo, like, I never did any of this work. I never did the self-examination. I never really grew spiritually, and now I'm about that. I don't know how I got so far without it, but now I'm about that. Like, peace is everything, and really understanding how I'm wired and what I'm here for. That makes sense. And I know that I have identity outside of relationship, outside of motherhood, outside of a job. Like, I'm somebody outside of all that. Like, are you established enough to know who fits and who can really run with you and who you are a fit for, right? Are you established or mature enough to really recognize that? So these are great things to do a temperature check and really assess, are you ready for love? Because love is mature. Love is so many beautiful things. If you look in the Word of God, there's so many beautiful things that say what love is. Also what it isn't. But it's really, really important to start studying this if you haven't, and start practicing this and start doing your own personal development and self-work. It's not just a cute word. It's something that really impacts everyone that you're connected to, and especially you. So I hope this blessed you. If you could think of anyone off the top of your head as you were listening to this that this would be a blessing for, make sure that you copy the link and share with a friend. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you can get more information just like this. All right, guys, until next time.